Just want to magnify your name. We just want to lift up our praise to you, Lord. For you do deserve the glory, the honour and the praise. Amen. First of all, don't worry about the numbers of sheets of paper I've got in front of me. It's not a sign of the length of the talk, it's a sign of my eyesight. I have a choice. I can either have it in normal print and wear glasses and not see any of you, or I can have it in large print and have lots of sheets of paper, which means I can still read and see all of you. I wanted to start this morning by saying how much I'm really enjoying our current series of talks on the Psalms. For me, there's just something really special about the book of Psalms. I love on so many occasions how you can see the teachings of the Old and the New Testament drawn together in one place. I also love the emotions that we find in the Psalms. Psalms of real joy and happiness, but also expressions of just such raw emotion. It's almost for me that the Psalms gives us permission to not be okay, to ask those difficult questions, to kind of raise the doubts that many of us have had at times. And then I also love about the Psalms is that the fact that when we do ask those difficult questions, when the psalmist asks a difficult question, you usually get an immediate answer. And we see that in this morning's psalm. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord. And several of the talks in this series have picked up on the theme of help and support. When Chris was putting together the series of talks, he asked us all the speakers to kind of choose a psalm that meant something to us personally, so that when we talk, we were talking from the heart. And I know we would expect the vicar to be able to do it, but talk about leading from the front, Chris. I thought your talk on Psalm 3 was just so incredibly powerful and meaningful. For those that didn't hear it, Chris was talking about how he uses Psalm 3 to lift him from his dark places. And if you haven't seen it, it's well worth going back on the YouTube channel for. That's my bit of brown nosing done, you know. But Richard also spoke on the power of the Psalms. When he spoke on Psalm 40, he spoke about being lifted out of a pit. And in a way, I'll continue that theme a little bit this morning. You see, Psalm 121 just gives me such a powerful message, a message of hope, of security, of absolutely peace of mind that God is there to protect and to help. And I just want to explain a little bit, first of all, about how this psalm has become to mean so much to me. You see, the opening verses, I lift my eyes to the mountains, where does my help come from? It comes from the Lord. It's almost kind of an echo back to my childhood. And I'm not sure why that is. It's for two reasons. First of all, it's either a memory verse that we had to learn at Sunday school. I'd like to think it was a memory verse we had to learn at Sunday school, but I fear it's probably more linked to my mum's great love for the film The Sound of Music. Now, I'm ashamed to say that it's the love of The Sound of Music. It must be hereditary because it's passed down to me. I love the film. I watch it far too often, 4 to 5 times a year. Sandra could talk to you about the embarrassment of me reenacting Do Re Mi in Salzburg in the Mirabelle Gardens, jumping up and down the steps. I'm now banned from watching the film at home when anybody else is in. Apparently, it's too much noise. Sandra, the noise is actually singing, it's not noise. And I digress, but why does it remind me? Because at the end of the film, when the Von Trapp family are hiding on the Abbey roof before they make their escape, they get informed by the Reverend Mother that the borders are closed, and they say, we're going to have to go over the mountains on foot. And Maria says, well, what about the children? And the children goes, we can do it without help. And the Reverend Mother turns to Maria and she just says, you won't be without help. I lift my eyes to the hill. My help comes from the Lord. You will not be alone. And I guess it's something about mountains that really resonates with me. I love the mountains. I love walking in the mountains. Nowhere brings me closer to God than when I'm walking in the mountains. This is a picture taken in 2016 in Switzerland. We took a group of scouts to camp in Switzerland. It was a long, hard walk to get to this. It was a whole day's walk. It was tough, and just before you get there, you have to walk across a really tough piece. It's a glacier. You get to the top of the glacier, and you turn left. It sounds very simple, doesn't it? Get to the top of the glacier, turn left, and you turn left, and that's the scene that meets you. Just to the left of the picture, there is the fantastic youth hostel, which we stayed in overnight before our descent the following day. But there's something about mountains, when you're there, you've got the cross at the top of many mountains. I just get a sense of the power of God's creation, the stillness in the mountain air. I just love it. And I guess, because of my love of mountains, it's little surprise that one of my go-to passages starts with somebody standing, staring up to the hills. But my love for the Psalm 121 goes deeper than just because it's somebody staring to the hills. It spoke to me at a very difficult time, and I'm just going to share that shortly with you now. It really began to speak to me in February 2012. I could almost pinpoint the date. It was during that time that my mum was nearing the end of her battle with cancer. We'd had a few weeks at the hospital, and she'd been transferred to the hospice in the Weald, and we spent quite a few days there. And during our time at the hospice, we got to speak to one of the chaplaincy team members. I believe her name was Lisa, but it may not be. I might have got it wrong, but we'd say Lisa today. Lisa got to know us as a family. She got to know Mum really well, and Mum had a really strong faith. It was a faith that was developed in this building. She used to talk how, as a child, she used to climb over the back walls of the gardens in Colbrook Road to run through the gardens to get to church on time. Personally, I've never understood how climbing over garden walls and running through people's back gardens was quicker than walking out your front door and going down the road, but apparently it was. But as Mum's strength waned, it became really obvious that her time with us on earth was drawing to a close. And Lisa said, would we like a short service with Mum? So we gathered round Mum's bedside. Mum was conscious for most of the service, and it was a really nice, moving, emotional service. And I know Mum really appreciated it. I kind of got the feeling that from the end of that service, Mum had accepted where she was. Before then it was a battle with cancer. After that service, it was just an acceptance. She was prepared to meet her Lord. But it was an emotional service, and we went, and after that service, I kind of needed a few moments of my own. I needed to find some time for myself. So I went to the multi-faith, the quiet room at the hospice. And in that room, there hung a picture on the wall, a picture of snow-capped mountains reflected in a lake, not dissimilar to that picture there. Nothing particularly special about it, but just one that captivated me. I stood there and I just remember staring at this scene. Don't know how long I stood there staring. Don't know whether I was actually thinking of anything at the time. I was just staring at the picture. And then I sat down and picked up a book off the table. When you've been in a doctor's waiting room or a dentist, you just sit down and you pick up something off the coffee table. You don't really know what it is, and you start flicking through, and then you kind of wonder why you're looking at Women's Weekly or something like that. But you kind of pick it up, and you don't really know what you've picked up. Well, that was the case for me in that room. I just picked up a book at random, and I opened the book, and I started to read. And the first words that I read were, I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And I just found myself reading those first two verses, going back to the picture, reading the first two verses, going back to the picture, reading a bit more of the psalm, and eventually I was reading the whole psalm. I don't know how many times I've read it that day, read it quite a few times, just read the psalm, looked at the picture, read the psalm. And as I was reading the psalm, there was one word that just kept jumping out at me. I was familiar with the psalm, I knew the psalm, but I'd been missing a vital word. And I'm going to come back to that word in a minute. Because it was through that word that I took a whole new meaning from this psalm. It'd just gone from one of those passages that I kind of knew the words to one that I'd now turn to regularly. Because it was a message of reassurance, help and protection. So let's just dive into that psalm a bit more, because I believe that that message wasn't just for me in that room in February 2012. There's a message there of help and protection for each and every one of us. Psalm 121 is part of a collection of psalms called the Songs of Ascent. They were songs and prayers sung by pilgrims on a journey to Jerusalem. It was like the Spotify playlist of its time. You know, when you go on a journey and you have your favourite playlist in the car. If you've got kids, it's probably Wheels on the Bus or something like that. But you know, whatever your favourite songs are on a journey, the songs of ascent were those at the time. And the psalm begins with a pilgrim looking to the hills and saying, "Where does my help come from?" And the act of looking to the hills is a really significant one. It's a song for a journey. They're just about to go to Jerusalem. And Jerusalem itself isn't a mountain, but it is settled in mountainous terrain. It kind of sits at a height of just over 2,500 feet above sea level. To put that into perspective, if it was a mountain, that would be in the top 30 to 40 mountains in England, most of which are found in the Lake District, and there really isn't a lot of difference between number 10 and number 50. You know, they're all within a few feet of each other. The journey to Jerusalem meant travelling some rough, challenging terrain, steep, rough, uneven tracks. You know, when we're talking about walking up mountains in the Lake District, for example, most of the mountains kind of are almost made up tourist footpaths now. If they're not quite made up with yellow arrows, they're fairly well maintained because they're trying to fight erosion. Going to Jerusalem back then, it wasn't easy. It would have been a tough, dangerous journey just because of the terrain. But then you had to add in the added danger of thieves, robbers, murderers, waiting in those hills, waiting to pounce on their next victim. Going on that journey meant facing certain danger. And the psalmist asks, "Where will my help come from?" And as I say with the Psalms, I love it because you get an immediate answer. Your help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Now, how reassuring is that? Regardless of how difficult the road is, no matter how difficult the journey, we're told that our help comes from the Lord. He's there to help and guide us. We're all on journeys, aren't we? You know, life is a journey. It's a phrase that's kind of become so popular because of reality TV. You know, when they get knocked out of Strictly, "Oh, I've loved the journey." Everything's a journey. It's kind of there. But, you know, life is a journey. And that journey is made up of lots of different journeys, some smaller, some more important, some big. But we're all on that journey. You know, we're in the season of Lent, and Lent is often described as a journey to the cross. And I don't know about you, but, you know, Lent at times just feels a really dark and desperate journey. But of course, we know it concludes with the celebration of Christ rising from the dead on Easter Sunday. I could almost end my talk here, couldn't I? You know, the message of God being there to help us. But if I did, I'd be missing out on that key word. The word that really changed the whole meaning of this passage for me back in February 2012. The word that just jumped off the page at me that day, and whenever I read it, it jumps off the page at me now. That word is a simple word. It's keep. And keep is quoted in the passage 6 times in 5 verses. How did I miss the importance of it? Something that's repeated that often has to be really important. So what does keep mean? Well, the basic definition of the word keep as a verb is to have in possession. And that, again, is reassuring. The Lord keeps us. He has us in his possession. But I think keep goes beyond that. It goes beyond just being a mere possession. You see, we all own things, don't we? A computer, pen, pairs of glasses, mobile phones. We own lots of stuff. But do we keep them? No, I would suggest they're just commodities. We own them, we use them, and when they pass their useful time, we throw them away. So what is keep if it's not just owning them? Well, consider those of you that have pets. If you're a dog owner, a cat owner, yes, you are the owner. That's the legal definition. You know, if your dog bites somebody, you are responsible as the owner. But I would suggest you do more than own them. I would suggest you keep them. You care for it. You provide for it. You give it love. You give it affection. You give it shelter and food. We genuinely keep our pets. We don't just own them. And the same applies to our families. We keep our families. When our children are young, we do absolutely everything for them. Sometimes feels like you do everything for them as they get older, but we never actually stop keeping our families. We do everything we can for them, no matter how old they are. We love and cherish them forever. We do all we can to protect them. You know, this was kind of underlined to me back in October last year. James, my eldest son, crashed his car along the road in Powder Mill Lane. Nobody was hurt, but his car was a write-off. It was the first time he'd been involved in anything like that. And it was a Monday afternoon and I'd gone to a work meeting, but I'd left my phone behind. I'd left my phone at home. When I got home, there was about 40, 50 missed calls from him. Of course I was upset because he was upset. But actually, I was upset because as his dad, I wasn't there to help and protect him when he needed me. He'd tried to call me 50 times and I wasn't there for him. We keep our children forever. That's the difference between keep and owning. And the psalm just provides us that reminder, doesn't it? That the Lord keeps us. Let's have a look at the psalm again. It says, "He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore." It doesn't say the Lord will keep you when he remembers to pick up his mobile phone. He's there. He will not slumber. He will not rest. It's there by day and by night. Such a powerful message of help and protection that's there all the time. But the trouble is with help, there are two significant challenges that we face with help. First is asking for it, and the second is accepting it. And I don't know about you, I don't feel I'm very good at asking for help, and I don't feel I'm very good at accepting it sometimes. But they really are challenges for us, and not just for me, but I think for all of us. Some of you looking around, not all of you, but some of you will remember life before sat-navs. How often have we driven around in a circle, often parking right outside the building that we were looking for, saying it must be here somewhere, but we wouldn't wind down the window and ask somebody because it was probably a sign of weakness. It had to be there. Or perhaps you've purchased some flat pack furniture. My notes say MFI, but that's showing my age. It say IKEA. You bring it home. You unpack it. You've brought a table. The tabletop is fairly obvious. You know it has some legs, so you start, oh yeah, there's the legs, screw them on. You know it's got to have some cross pieces to stop it wobbling, so you find something that looks like them and you put them on. And you finish the table, you stand it upright, and it might be a little bit wobbly, but you think, yeah, I've done it. And then you look at the box, and there's 3 or 4 bits left. And then you pick up that all-important instruction manual and realise that if you'd read the instruction manual first, those bits that you've got left in the box should have been used in step 5 of about 120 in this construction process. The help was provided, but you didn't choose to use it. And to fully benefit from this psalm, we really have to understand that God is there for us to help us in everything we do. It's not just those big life-changing moments. Yes, they are important. They are important. And I think as Christians, we often find it easier to pray into those really big moments. Moments about health, moments about work. They're easy to pray into because we know they're life-changing moments. But we find it difficult to remember that the small matters matter to him as well. He's there for us 24/7, not just on those big moments. When I was doing a little bit of research for today's talk, I found this quote from Eugene Peterson. Eugene Peterson was an American minister and author. And he wrote this: "We know that God created the universe and has accomplished our eternal salvation. But we can't believe that he condescends to watch a soap opera of our daily trials and tribulations. So we purchase our own remedies for that. Because to ask him to deal with what troubles us each day is like asking a famous surgeon to put iodine on a scratch. But it's in those ordinary, it's in those mundane moments when we struggle to get out of bed, when we face decisions of day-to-day living, or we're just having to deal with the weariness that creeps into our daily lives. God is there. He's holding you. He's preserving you. He's there to provide that help and support that you need. It doesn't mean to say that life will be easy. We will suffer. We will struggle. We will face grief. But trusting in God means believing in who he is. You know, we're going to share communion together very shortly. What greater reminder is there of God's help? A help and desire to protect us so strong that he sent his only son Jesus to die for you and for me and for our sins, so he could protect us, so he could keep us from having to pay the price of our sin. So even when it feels that life is falling apart, whatever troubles or concerns you're facing, take the reassurance that the Lord is your keeper. He's there to help and provide protection. So just in a few moments now, before Mark comes to lead us in prayer, I just invite you to think about whatever is troubling you today, whatever is causing you distress or anxiety. It may be a big item like work, health, or financial concerns. But it may be something so small that you really don't consider it worth asking about help for. That's not the case, because if it's troubling you, if it's on your mind, the help is there for you. I just really encourage you to consider what's on your mind. Place those issues at the foot of the cross. Just pray, place them there. Turn your eyes heavenly. Turn your eyes towards the hills and take the reassurance that your help will come from the Lord. Amen.